You are listening to the North American Kings podcast, your traditional masculinity training ground. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski, founder of North American Kings LLC, a leadership development company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. As we all know, the man brand has taken an absolute beating over the past few decades, and it's our mission to change that. We're going to do that by helping you join the fight to reclaim traditional masculine values. Welcome to headquarters. Training starts now. Welcome back to the training ground, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. We've got a very real show for you today. Like our last episode, there are things going on right now that are testing the limits of what you've been told about manhood. The truth, my friends, is breaking free in real time. You can see it, and it's beautiful. Pure truths have a way of bubbling to the surface. Like lies, they always, and I mean always, find a way to the surface. Masculinity in its raw state is also a rule of nature. Anyone denying that is denying reality. And as such, when we repress the actual reality, we see the after effects. It's there for a reason, and it's a critical piece of the puzzle. Now, unfortunately for my new listeners, we have been experiencing years of intentional disinformation about what it truly means to be a man. The line is big and bold in some areas, but finer in others. What we can say for sure is that we're seeing a regression right now in the present in some very, very positive ways. This episode should glow brightly in the ether as we go through some of these very positive stories out there in just this past news cycle. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Naked Armor Razors and Wet Shave Gear. This company gets it. Providing men with a great shave is only part of what this company brings to the table. They also provide the first of our cardinal responsibilities. Naked Armor Razors founder, D-Rock, got a phone call one afternoon that announced the death of his dear uncle, Kurt. Kurt had fallen on some hard times and died while living on the streets of San Francisco back in 2019. Since then, D-Rock decided to do something. He created the Curtis Tiffany Food Fund, which has provided 26,773 meals to those in need. Men are doers, and D-Rock supports the mission and models the traits that all men should aspire to. To help him in both of his missions, let D-Rock provide you with the means to enjoy the highest quality shave you'll ever give yourself. Don't forget to use coupon code KINGS15 for 15% off of anything in the Naked Armor Razors online store. Go to nakedarmorrazors.com. That's nakedarmorrazors.com to enjoy the highest quality shave you'll ever give yourself. Now, today's episode is going to wind a little bit like a lazy country road through the hills, all right? Not like Kentucky here where the hills get absolutely nuts, right? Don't bring your bike to Kentucky. But part of this is because I want to provide some real advice, and I want to tie it into what we're seeing here in the news cycle, okay? Because we're going to get some current events here, and like it's going to be a heavy pedestal day, all right? But we're seeing things in the real world, and it's amazing. We're seeing masculinity claw itself back into its rightful place. This can happen anywhere in big or small ways. As you can expect, I get this at home all the time, all right? My title as king of the household is extremely well earned. And here's an example. In the past 2 weeks, I have actively saved my family between $1,000 and $38,000. That's correct. Now, that's a wide range, worst case, right? The realistic, actual, I'm pretty sure, this is absolutely the amount, is $4,800 in the past 2 weeks alone. Okay, now how could this be? It's very simple, gentlemen. Car repairs. Okay, my father did a crazy job honing my mechanical aptitude out of sheer will of his own. And I say that because I could not have cared less about cars as a kid. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care about cars now. I like my cars, ladies and gentlemen, my cars are not like, I'm not like a gearhead, and like I would be working on my car because just for the pride of it. I fix cars because I have to, right? It's cheaper. Like at the end of the day, I believe me, I enjoy the feeling that I get when I accomplish that and fix something. But it's just because I did, not because of like, oh my God, like look at my, 1970. Again, I don't even know what year to say. Like I've like an old Corvette or something like that. Like that's not what this is about. All right. My father did his duty and forced me to learn something that has fundamentally shaped my entire life. Okay, young dads out there, I'm telling you, like you have no idea what effect you're going to have, but it should be profound. My dad did a very basic thing, teach me how to provide for myself, and I made a career out of that. I make a good living teaching people how to use tools for a living. Are you serious? I do it by simulating the process that my father took me through. It's not that hard, right? I had this thought back, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he was a superintendent way back when in a manufacturing plant, and we were talking about what we wanted to expect out of rookie supervisors. And I was a rookie supervisor. I'd been there for not even a year. And I will never forget, I said, hey, they should be able to do this, and this. And like all the stuff that I was kind of doing. And this superintendent looked at me and said, hey, like we can't expect them all to be you, Glenn. And what I appreciated the compliment, but I didn't understand it because I was looking at him like, I'm not that special. I'm really not. I'm saying things that people are not really looking to say. That's the experience I have with you. But I'm like that. It doesn't take anybody with profound insight to see it and to experience it. I took the effort to say it and get it to you, right? But I'm not that special, right? It's not that hard. But again, aptitude levels do ebb and flow. I get that. Not everybody's like comfortable in certain situations. What I'm telling you is that you can work on this. Now, I didn't learn because I wanted to. I learned out of pure survival instinct. When my father forced the issue, sure, I complied. I'm my father's soldier. Now, as an adult, I'm effectively his duke. Like I'm the guy he calls when stuff's about to go down, right? So as a kid, I fell in line pretty quickly, just as a force of my personality. To an authority I trust and agree with, believe me, I can be very compliant. Like that's in me. So when my father told me as a teenager, go change your brakes, sure, like you did that. Right? I learned how that job worked by holding the light for him and getting yelled at when I screwed up. Like that's real, ladies and gentlemen. When some guy is listening right now and he's chuckling to himself because that's absolutely what happens. Boyle, hold the light here. And you would, you'd hold the light on the brakes and your dad, the brakes right there so that your dad could see and the light properly. And then, but you're a kid, you get bored. So you'll eventually let the light slip a little bit, like you'll nod off a little bit. And that's when you'll hear, hey, hold the light right here. Now, what did that force? Get through the shouts, get through the boredom. Holding the light on a specific spot and paying attention and doing it is forcing you to pay attention. Like right here, it's forcing you to really restrict your view to this spot. Keep your eyes on it. That's where his tools are. Again, in a knife fight or you always keep your eyes on the weapon. Cops go through this. They always look at the hands. The hands are what kills you, right? On a car job, your hands are what's doing the work, right? Your hands are where your sight is needed, right? Again, it forced you to pay attention more specifically on what was doing. Eventually, after several of these jobs, you got so bored that when your dad says, hey, you want to loosen this bolt? All you can think to say is, hell yeah. Anything, just to get away from the boredom. But a weird thing happens. You do it, and you have a spotter. So there's like no risk outside of needing some advice or maybe not being strong enough to break a bolt loose. All right, for those of you who don't know, when like bolts like sit in a car or sit in position for a while, sometimes like the metal expands and contracts over time and with wear and all that stuff. So they kind of stick. So when you're wrenching on something, you might give it all your effort, and then eventually it's just going to pop, and you have a wrench. There's a risk of punching metal. Believe me, I've paid my blood sacrifice to the saints often in just being in a weird spot, and that bolt finally breaks, and I don't have enough dexterity to stop myself from punching a piece of metal. It's happened a lot. It hurts. But I will tell you, you can wear car gloves like while you're doing this. I mean, eventually they're just going to get saturated with fluid anyway. And, your hands are really good grip too. I'm just saying. All right. But what I'm saying is, outside of needing your dad for just a couple of those small things, you are the ones who get that part of the job done. And you feel this sense of accomplishment that, again, even as an adult, I can't shake. Right? It's almost like going to the gym when you're putting up weight that you didn't think you were capable of. You struggle, you're getting it up, you're shaking, you grunt, and you get the weight up on shaky arms, and you feel this elation, this lightness of self. It's nuts. You turn to your spotter, you hammer home a high five worthy of a new personal record. This carves out a new neural pathway in your mind. Now you go back, you can compare new experiences to this. I just changed my brakes. You know what? It looks very complicated, but if you look at it in reality, it's 2 bolts. Huh. It's 2 bolts held on this thing. What if other jobs that are intimidating are just 2 bolts? 2 bolts that I have the tools for. And it's liberating. Right? Now this freedom, this knowledge of your own real potential is something you will never lose. And unfortunately, it will also be your burden. Case in point, over the past few weeks, I've had to replace both ball joints to my car. And those are the front joints. They're kind of like your shoulder hinge. The front wheel bearing, which I let go for maybe longer than I should have. Both sets of brake shoes on the back tires. And whoever invented brake shoes, I know... I know there was probably a reason for it, but that design is awful. And if you ever get the opportunity to choose between brake shoes and brake discs, do yourself a favor and do brake discs. Disc brakes are the best. Just brake shoes are awful. Okay? I'm saying that from a guy who works on both. Okay? I can do both. Brake shoes are easier to work on, and they're better, and there's 1,000 reasons why disc brakes are what you want on your car, both front and back. Take that, chew it, that's for you. So, this burden that you're going to get, okay? Again, ball joints, wheel bearing, brake shoes, and I had to replace a key component to my car's transmission. So, at a minimum, I'm looking at like $1,000, and that's just labor. Like, I'm not looking at even parts. Brakes are a pain in the butt, but they're relatively easy to do, right? They require a lot of tools. Again, brake shoes can be awful. Okay, so I'm telling you, if you can't just avoid brake shoes, that I am a penny pincher in some cases. I would rather spend the money if I didn't have stuff going on right now, I would have spent the money and just done it. All right, like just have a dude do that. It's just annoying. It's time was again. I hate brake shoes. Okay, ball joints. It takes some specialized tools, but it's not the easiest job. But the specialty tools can be rented for a deposit, which you get back. So effectively, it's free. Okay. Or you can purchase them for like $50. Now I'm about to buy some just so I don't have to return these specialty tools when I'm done. Like that, my time at the end of a project is probably worth more to me than the $50 to go back and forth. The big project though is the one I just got done. Now I'm in Southern Kentucky working with a business that my company has just acquired. Now, I drove my own car because you can expense mileage and end up making a killing, right? Like relatively. So I spent, let's say, $45 on gas the entire trip and ended up getting $150 in real money for the use of my personal vehicle. So effectively, I pocket $100 for depreciation or wear and tear on my own personal vehicle. Usually, this isn't a problem. But on my way back, I noticed that my car didn't want to accelerate in certain cases. And when I got to speed, the car didn't want to shift into the higher gears. Ruh-roh. Right? Now, I'm a do-it-yourself superstar. Okay? DIY should be tattooed to my chest. Right here. Right? In my years of roughing it on car repairs, I have found that diagnosis is the hardest part. Now, one thing to realize on cars, it can be several things that cause one weird symptom that you're experiencing. Particularly with cars, the golden rule of the 90s was start with the cheapest and simplest thing. All right? This would have saved me weeks as a teenager had I adhered to the rule. Okay? But that takes time. As a husband and father, I don't have time anymore to fool around with whether my car functions correctly. And that's because my kids are super young. So I'm not discouraging you guys from having kids. What I'm saying is that like these first couple years, I don't miss anything. I have gone personally to 5 different Halloweens in just this past cycle. I mean, I hope you guys had a great Halloween, but like October 31st is not the only one. You've got Halloween at the zoo. You've got Halloween at the Y. You've got Halloween at school. You've got Halloween at work. I'm not a Halloween guy. I participate so like my employees will want to participate and they'll feel like things are lighthearted. The risk is that, you've got some maintenance guy who's going to be like, hey, try doing a real job in that getup. Fair. But participating in my kids' events and engaging them and doing costumes, like my wife always wants to do these family get-ups, right? They're family-themed costumes. Yay. Last couple years it's been the Paw Patrol. I'm Rubble because construction pup and bald. Yeah. But this year we're doing Pokemon. I'm going as Arcanine because I'm not going as my trainer's son's like first evolution Pokemon. No, thank you. So what I'm saying is I don't miss things like that, right? But I want to spend my free time on those things. I want to be active in developing my kids. When they get older and they want to do their own thing, they're playing by themselves, they're exploring, they're thinking on their own, they're discovering who they are. Yeah, of course I'll have more time to work on cars and other stuff. Right? But right now, my car repairs need to happen when they need to happen. Now, fortunately, there are new tools for diagnosis. Right? I invested my money in a code reader, which you can borrow from your choice of auto store while you're there. Like you drive up and you're like, hey, can I borrow a code reader? You stick it in, and it'll kind of spit out this thing, right? I have one of my own, and it's awesome. The reason is because it saves me that time. For this transmission thing, like who knew what that was going to be, right? I don't know what transmissions. That's heavy work, right? But I needed to start somewhere. So luckily this time when I plugged this thing in, it spat out code P1778, which is transmission step motor. Now you Google that code P1778, like Nissan Sentra, and you'll get several websites that will tell you what that thing means. Normally they give you a few options, like P, 101, 4 or whatever, pick a number, will be, well, it could be this or this or this or this. And they're, this one's serious. These two are not. Yeah. But this time all roads led to one issue and maybe like this other secondary issue, which I didn't think was a problem. Solid state circuitry, I didn't fry that. But it turns out the step motor is mounted on the valve body. There's this huge thing, and I'm gonna throw a picture up right here a little bit later. But there's this big thing that you get to yank out of your transmission. The step motor is just this little thing right on top of it. Now you have to drop the transmission fluid pan, remove the filter, not lose track of the bolts, and only take out a few of the bolts that are visible, lest the whole entire valve body fall apart, which jacks up the price and increases the lead time of getting this car fixed, because I got to go find a new valve body, not just this little motor. Right? It's an intermediate project for someone like myself. Now, to be honest, it was far messier than anything else. Why do I bring this up? Again, an ode to my father. I've changed transmission filters before. Which means I've dropped a transmission pan. That's the most intimidating part of this whole thing. FYI, used transmission fluid smells foul. All right? It's sickly sweet. It smells like infection. It's gross. But I've had experience with it. Way back from high school, when my father tossed me under my mom's van for me to do half of this job. Now, as a man on my own turf without dad's help, I was already halfway there and not scared to try. Understand, my car isn't worth $2,000. It's paid off, right? But that means, like, if my car's not worth $2,000, that means if I have to pay a guy roughly $2,800, like that, and the $28 that this job gets quoted at, like I know this, I'm good at pricing this stuff out of my head, and I've researched it. I'm gonna pay out more than what my car's worth to do this job. Now it's big boy time. At this point, you need to seriously look at what you want to invest in a vehicle. Value of the car minus cost of the job. That's it. If that number's negative, you've got a serious discussion you need to have. Okay? If that number goes negative, then you do this next equation. Okay? So, to replace the transmission, which is what a professional mechanic is going to tell me in this case, that's what all the research said. Like, they don't sell this step motor individually. They sell you either the valve body or you go to the dealer and the dealer says you need a new tranny. Well, no. Right? If a new transmission costs anywhere from like a used one on eBay, which again, do you trust it or don't you? I'm going to pay a few $1,000s, or I'm going to pay $500 for something that a guy pulled out of his car, which you can do, but again, So to put that into perspective, take the cost of the repair and divide it by the number of years you think you can get out of the car. For me, this number is $937. Okay? Now let me tell you. That means that I'm effectively paying $937 for every year that I am likely to get out of this vehicle. Okay? So like just to kind of, again, give perspective to my time and the value of the car and everything, that means that if I want the car to last if I think the car's going to last 2 years, like that number goes up. But let's just say I'm paying like, cash here. I'm like, hey, I'm going to buy 4 more years to my car. Do I want to spend $937 for another calendar year on this vehicle? I've had this car for 11 years. It's paid off. So like, do I want to spend that? Or do I want to spend a relative $1,400, $1,500, which is the same equation done cost of the new vehicle over how many years that vehicle is likely to last. All right. So $937 or $1,500, and I don't have to worry about it. Again, it's all about perspective. I know this is funky math, but I want you guys to be able to process this real world arithmetic in situations like this. These are mostly solid numbers, but the idea is not to heave like this, I'm going to spend this much. No, what you're doing, you're putting some logic to chaos, right? It's just there to provide some perspective. All right. Like when I'm renting an apartment, I always divide the cost of the apartment by square footage. All right. Cost per square foot is a good way to make all things relative. Like, hey, this apartment's got more space than I'll ever need, but relative to the cost, it might look better. Again, to you, it might not be worth it. If you can afford both, then you have to make these decisions. But back to the repair. Understand, transmission step motors are what shift your car. It's a tiny motor on top of the valve body inside an automatic transmission. It responds to electrical signals that are sent to it by the transmission control module, which is like this small square little plug-in. And it's like a solid state hub, right? And it takes in electricity and sends it out the right way. That I would have replaced if like this fix didn't work. The step motor, ladies and gentlemen, costs $20. That's right. Not thousands, not hundreds. Just a Fat Jackson, 4 Lincolns, 2 Hamiltons. I'm talking $20. Okay? So I spent $20. Drop this valve body out of the transmission. I spent $70 on, let's say, transmission fluid and other erroneous things. So now the math looks very different. So let's say I spent like $200 on parts, shipping, and fluid, because fluid for your transmission is probably the more expensive part in this whole mess. If I spent that much and we'll get another 5 years out of the car, which is what I'm expecting, that cost is roughly $42 a year. All right. That's pretty awesome, right? So $1,200, right? Is that do the math? Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, $1,200. Please don't judge me. math. This at this hour now. So I'm going to spend $42 a year for every year I get my that's math. I'm taking that deal. Now my wife gave me other perspective, right? And believe my wife's an amazing wife will do this for you. I told her that, well, there goes my weekend, $2,800 I'm looking to save. And she said, well, your time isn't worth that much. Go fix it. Like I was thinking of like, hey, I'll pay a guy because I need a weekend off. Like this is, I'm burning out. And she's like, no, you're not signing a check for $2,800 when you can do it. Get out there. And I appreciate that, sweetheart. You kept me in line. She's my manhood spotter. Like, what can I say? Like she's just as invested in me being a man as anybody else, right? But I continue to think about that. Now you might be thinking, Glenn, sir, I don't have the tools to do any of this. Well, fair enough. Here's the cool thing. You don't need many tools for a job like this. All right? And I mean this holistically. I ripped open my transmission with the following tools. All right? 2 tiny Allen wrenches, a 9/16 wrench to pull the drain plug, or at least I think it was 9/16, a 10 millimeter socket, jack stands, and a pan, which you could use a bowl from the kitchen to hold all that like fluid that came out of that transmission. That's not a lot of tools. And I made my transmission work. Think about that. That's heavy work. I saved $2,800. And I'm going to break this down. You don't need that many tools for it. All right? All because I wasn't scared to dive in. A YouTube video that went through, like a mechanic was like, hey, this is how this job goes. A few cautious bolts like taken out, and bang, you're in business. Here's what I want to lay out for you. Okay, tools are some of the biggest investments you'll ever make in your future. Okay, my tools are very valuable. Like, I'm going to say very valuable. I'm never selling them. That's the point. Why? Because they save me money. They enable me to do this other stuff. You know, like, hey, you start selling a house or you buy a house and you're like, man, I don't like this room. Like, it needs a fan or something like that. Well, instead of saying, I don't want to buy this house that I really want because of ceiling fans, change it with the tools I'm gonna point out to you right here. All right, I'm gonna lay all this out for you because it's gonna help you with like everything. I started with two things: a set of jacks and a set of sockets. All right. Now I started buying tools early. Now my first socket set, which I got my very first job, first paycheck. Well, my first paycheck was a paintball gun. All right. But I was a kid. Okay. Second paycheck, socket set. 300-piece Craftsman socket set from Sears. May God bless that awful store. Okay. No, I'm sorry. Like that, Sears was defunct for years before they finally collapsed. And when they had an exclusive deal with Craftsman, which is, I think, the reason they remained in business for so long, because Craftsman were the gold standard of tools, right? It's still one of the most reliable hand tools in the business. Now Craftsman has an exclusive deal with Lowe's, right? Now I have to admit, again, I have a very hit and miss relationship with Lowe's, and not to say I haven't had touchy experiences at Home Depot too, but when I say this, get tools that you're confident in. Again, I started with Craftsman, and they are they are great, but believe it or not, Husky brand tools are making a huge play at it, and their tools are amazing. I have sets myself because you keep adding to your tool set, right? Now, I've been switching over my hand tool purchases to Husky for some time now because, I didn't like doing business with Sears, right? And very recently, Lowe's acquired this deal with Craftsman, but their original exclusive tool supplier was Cobalt, which, admittedly I don't have a lot of experience with, but for some reason I've never really I never had a good feeling for them. Right? But also, it makes me question the efficacy of Cobalt tools if Lowe's was willing to drop their exclusivity. Now, I get that was to take on Craftsman, which was, again, the gold standard. But the fact that Cobalt is still around makes me, it kind of feels, it reminds me of a guy who's like cheated on his wife and parades his new girlfriend around a house that they're all still living at. It feels weird. Now, I know Milwaukee tools have been around Home Depot for some time, and they are a great standard tool. But that relationship was established before Husky really took off, right? So again, I understand that relationship. But either way, what I'm saying is that Craftsman, Husky, and Milwaukee tools are superior quality based on my experiences with them, particularly when it comes to hand tools. All right? The Milwaukee for sure for your electronics, but you're paying for that. All right. Now, don't get me wrong. You can go off brand, but again, you need to know what you're looking for. Right. You have solid grips that aren't moving like this. Just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, this, and for those of you who can see this on the YouTube channel or Rumble, this is a pair of channel locks. Okay. This is one of the most useful tools I've ever owned. This tool has gotten me out of several jams. All right. This is one of your essentials. But when you're going off brand, you want to make sure there's no deflection here. And you can hear this click a little bit. Right? Some of that's natural, some of it's not. All right? But you can also go off brand. Like this is one of the first 6-in-1 screwdrivers I've ever used or purchased. It's brand Titan. You get it at AutoZone. Like this thing, even though it's off brand, has lasted me. I've had this since high school. Like for real. But a 6-in-1, again, you've got two ends. You got two ends for a screwdriver, both big and small, Phillips and flathead. And then you've got this end here where you can actually go into a standard, and you can go into a standard hex bolt and start wrenching on that. What I'm saying is, just know what to look for. You want your tools to be sturdy. All right? If you feel movement when there's not supposed to be movement, walk away. Now, I mentioned that 300-piece set I got from way back when. You don't need that. You don't need that much in order to unleash your independence. Here's what you need in order to do 90% of the jobs that I've ever done on my car or my house for that matter. Hydraulic jack stands, okay? Hydraulic jack stands are quick and they can pick up most anything. Remember, the piston stroke, like the distance it travels, and the carrying weight are what you need to spec out, okay? Once you jack the car up, you place these jack stands underneath, and they're fixed jack stands. You put them under a fixed point or key points under the car's frame. You put it under a car part, you're now like all the weight is on the bolts that hold that part on. You need to put it on under the frame. Okay? You want to make sure they hold up the car nice and secure. As an added safety measure, you lower the jack so that the car rests on the stand, but you leave the jack raised and in place, or in maybe a little bit better of a place, but you do that in case one of them fails, okay? A hydraulic jack set right now goes from anywhere from like $50 to $150. Buy the 151. All right, and I'm saying that because you get the jack and the stands. You need the stands, okay? Because if any part of the jack that goes up fails, that car is coming down, and it's coming down quick, okay? Use jack stands. Next, a Craftsman 83-piece socket set with standard and metric sockets. So you've got inches and then you've got metric. It's got a 3/8, which is the standard, and a 1/4-inch drive. Right? These sockets are 6 points, so they give you extra grip on the bolt head. And all bolt heads are 6-point hexagons. Right? Now, just so you know, if you go out and buy tools, there are 12-point sockets out there, and those do work, and they work great. But you do reduce the total amount of surface area on the bolt head that you're touching. So when it's available and when you can afford it, go 6 points. All right? That set of Craftsman sockets will get you 90% through anything you're dealing with. That set, $60. That's it. $210 for your future. And again, you don't need to buy it all at once. I'm still using the sockets I got in high school, right? These are meant to last. Now that's 90% of the tools you need. You want more? Fine. Spend $20 on a 2-pack of channel locks. You get this big dude and this little dude right here. You buy a twofer, right? Channel locks will help you, right? And you get to touch them at the store. You don't need to go name brand on those. Right? You get $10 for an adjustable wrench, and you get a big one. That handles all the stuff the sockets can't touch. And then you spent $8 on this 6-in-1 screwdriver. So you've got big flatheads and big Phillips, small flatheads and small Phillips, and then you get two hexagon points to turn on. Those screwdrivers, I mean, I buy them all the time. They're cheap, they're useful. Right? I don't need to carry around a couple different screwdrivers for a specific job. They're great. Now, once you have tools, you have them. All of this expands your ability to provide for yourself and to provide for others. This comes up every few months for me in either the house or my peer group. I've told you I've saved Brother Clark thousands of dollars, well, a couple $100 at a crack. I've saved myself some tens of thousands of dollars. I am not kidding. With those tools I mentioned, the car jack and the socket set, I changed out the calipers, so the things that squeeze your brake rotors, in the parking lot of my college campus school, like off somewhere, right? It looked janky. I got a call from the police office because I went to bed, like I put everything away, put it into my trunk, and I just left the car jacked up. And the cops called me because they saw that my car was still like up on its jack, and they were like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Well, everything's in the trunk. I didn't have enough time to fix the car." Right? But what I'm saying is, like, those tools will do it. People ask me for advice a lot. My job falls through. Believe me, I'm picking up car jobs under the table. You can get quality car parts at great prices from rockauto.com, unofficial plug. But I love these guys. Now, why tell you any of this? It's to let you know that you can reaffirm your value to yourself, to your family, and to those around you by taking up your traditional role in the system. You'll get opportunities for this, most of the time in very small ways, but in others, they can be rather large. Now it's time to put some dudes upon the pedestal of manhood, the pantheon. Like we are creating the Hall of Heroes here. All right. So the pedestal is just the first iteration. All right. No, I'm serious, folks. Now, sometimes we do need to celebrate and elevate men who are going above and beyond in the course of their manly duties. All right? Like that's something that we need to do, like, on this show, but that's something we need to do also, like, in our communities. Let those guys know that they're killing it. I encourage you. They're not gonna, like, no one shakes that compliment off. All right? Now, this one, I am glad to say, is not posthumous. Okay? A story that's all over the internet right now. And I see this on Fox, or I see this on the news aggregators I go through. So here we go. The Fox News article on this: Louisiana fathers have stepped in after repeated violence broke out in schools where a total of 23 kids were arrested in just 3 days. Father Michael Lafitte launched a group called Dads on Duty, signed up 40 fathers to take up shifts around Southwood High School in Shreveport, Louisiana. Violence has increased in the school over the last month, culminating in a violence spree that resulted in the school's resource officer having to actually call for police backup in order to help break these fights up. In that fight in particular, the sheriff had some things to say about the folks involved, but 7 older gentlemen or kids were expelled in that one particular incident. Then the dads step in, and the fights stopped completely. One student is quoted as saying, "I immediately felt a form of safety. We stopped fighting. People started going to class." This next one kills me. Like one student was asked by the reporter, like, why even comply? Right? And one student asked the reporter on the scene, "Have you ever hear of a look?" As she described a power the student said that all fathers have. Yes. Like, man, oh man, yes. It's true. It does exist. And a little note, you can start practicing this once your kid starts crawling. Okay? I do it all the time. Like, they start reaching for the outlet. You go, "Hey!" And then you give them the look. And that's when you practice, and then you figure out what type of look works for your kids. But the look is the look. All right? Now, these dads aren't just menacing, right? It's not like they're just there bouncing, right? They're cracking jokes with the kids. They're making them feel welcome. And more importantly, they're making them feel secure, right? They're being assertive, right? Assertion is being firm on the issue. You ain't fighting. but soft on the kids. These guys are nailing it. Now, what are these kids feeling? They're feeling like the presence of man. They're feeling discipline. More importantly, they're feeling the presence of multiple men. This is the point. Remember the multiplication principle. For if each of these 40 men exhibit traits of pure masculinity and affect 10 kids each, and they're spreading the positive effects of masculinity. And if these kids take up those principles and start being men, then that spreads and they start affecting people, and then they start affecting people. It doesn't stop. These kids are proving that when men are present, peace ensues. Place these men upon the pedestal. They deserve it. And they're oh my God, I love this story so much. Right? Next story. Another man worthy of the pedestal. Fox News headline. Former U.S. soldier returns to Afghanistan recently and rescues Christians from the Taliban. In case you guys were not aware, as some people are, when the United States just left Afghanistan, and when we did, under the plans of Joe Biden, it was chaos. Complete pullout. We abandoned a secure airport permanently and prematurely. We gave the Taliban a kill list in like the worst screw up of the entire mess, and one, and no one's willing to own this. Right? You've got generals pointing at each other. They're pointing at Biden. Biden's pointing at them. This doesn't look good for anybody. And we abandoned 20 years of work. And I gotta say, not like I'm qualified to be disappointed in the Afghans, but they got rolled over quickly. Right? And I mean very quickly. So again, this whole thing was a real mess, but this kill list thing was crucial. All right? It shows the ineptitude of the State Department, the Department of Defense, and the plan of the president. They actually thought that the list, so they were given, so the Taliban was given a list of people who were interpreters, who helped the U.S. government, who were Christian, all this stuff. They gave the Taliban a list of people that they would want to pursue. And they did it. So what the government is saying is that they gave the list to the Taliban with the understanding that the Taliban was just going to target those people and make sure that they got released. Yeah. Instead, the Taliban starts rounding them up and killing them. That's what happened. And the Christians in the area are being hunted for execution, lest they betray God and denounce him, which is blasphemy. Now, depending on your particular sect of Christianity, that ain't something you come out of. All right? Now, that'd be a very difficult thing for the truly faithful, and some are dying rather than denounce God. That's a tough one. I'll be honest with you. That happened to a couple of the saints, the disciples, right? I think it was Peter and Paul both betrayed God and were told, hey, I don't know that guy, as Jesus was being crucified, and they took it for that. But the reason I'm saying that, again, I'm not quoting, I'm not an expert, and you can tell this is not a scripted part of this, but the moral dilemma there is, do you renounce your faith in order to live on? And if you live on, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to be able to make up for the lie to God and saying, no, God, I really don't believe in you. Right? And even so, are they still going to not kill you? Again, you've got to weigh all these situations. I'm not sure what I would do. I gotta admit, there's a practical side to me that probably would lie. Right? And then I'd hope to live a life that would do more good and bring more people to Jesus and all that other stuff that would hopefully make up for that one betrayal. All right. But right now, Christians are being killed. Christians have been beheaded and ISIS was beheading Christians forever. It's not good to be a Christian in the Middle East. All right, even though the word is, better. And if you disagree with that, I don't give a shit. So, according to the article, our soldier went back to the hot zone through a closed border between Afghanistan and Pakistan initially to save his family. His relatives hid near Kabul when the takeover happened, fearing for their lives due to their connection to both this Army staff sergeant and their own work that they had done against the Taliban regime. Thus far, this soldier has helped 30 at-risk people, including many Christians, escape through Pakistan and into other countries. This last time, he was actually caught on his return trip, and he was actually whipped for this. Now, the Taliban was unaware of just whom he was helping cross the border, or the punishment would have been far worse. Our soldier has pled for help from the U.S. government. He's got nothing by way of response. This man has given much in order to help the United States. He's immigrated. So he immigrated to the United States legally as a teenager, as he was a refugee, days before 9/11. Right? Right after the attack, he enlists and then gets sent right back. Okay? Because of his enlistment, his family's been targeted. Afterwards, so after he enlisted, the Taliban firebombed his family home, attacked his sister, who was a government employee, and crippled his brother, who was in the process of trying to help his sister in that one exchange. He still walks with a limp, according to the article. Today, this soldier's family is being hunted through the country. They keep escaping through safe house after safe house, but they're running low on food, water, and supplies. This man isn't forsaking his family. Before all of this, he was injured and discharged from so he was injured during his service to the United States and was medically discharged, but he is still doing his duty to his family. He came back to a closed country, snuck in, and started smuggling people out to safety that were being hunted. Now, some liberals out there, and I'm going to call them out for what they are. Now, while some people may want to compare this to the invasion of thousands of people who are just ignoring our border completely down in Mexico, that invasion of the United States that's happening right now, let's look at some key differences. All right? Now, again, countries have sovereignty. They need that. All right? To be a country, you need to have established borders. That's an international maxim. All right? Now, when I say that, if 10,000 people crossed your border, or let's say 30 people moved onto your property with the sole intent of moving into your house, that would be an invasion, right? It's home invasion. Right? When 10,000 people do it, that's a small army. Right? We were planning to leave 2,500 soldiers in Afghanistan to help manage this whole thing. That's how many soldiers we needed, 2,500 to hold Kabul and to hold that capital of Afghanistan while we kind of made the move out. 10,000 cross the southern border and we don't say anything? No, that's an invasion. Right? The reason we're making a big deal about it is because it's not that it's illegal or anything like that. It's they're coming and we're doing nothing about it. We're not a cohesive country anymore. It doesn't seem like anybody can just walk in. That breaks the natural order. But again, I'm kind of getting onto an aside. But there are differences. All right? This man has served our country and was at least a green card holder. He immigrated legally as a kid. The families of our service members and those who have helped the United States during this war in Afghanistan were on a list given to the Taliban. They're the people that were meant to be, we already acknowledged they were going to be released to the United States for services rendered during the occupation. Moreover, these aren't economic migrants. They're coming here because they are going to be killed if they are not. That is a legal case to seek asylum. It's not, they're in contact with our government. They're trying to do this process the right way. The situation is far different than storming the United States border just because the conditions in your homeland, in your backyard, aren't as advantageous. Right? There are differences here. We need to acknowledge them. We owe a debt to this man for what he's done for us and the example that he is setting for men everywhere. Protect your family from real dangers at all costs. And help who you can along the way. Now, what can we do here? The only thing that I can do to help this guy is spread the word and put this man upon the pedestal. I want everybody to know this guy's story. Okay, next story from Florida. And this one, now we might not see eye to eye on this one. I'm all right with that. So, story from Fox. And actually, again, this story is all over. So, I've actually got two sources on this. Twofer. So, from Fox, Florida mom says child's school won't let her volunteer because of OnlyFans account. You know what? I think I know what side I am on this one. Again, if you guys are listening, I think you kind of know where we're going. Now, my wife and I actually disagree on this one. All right. Now, we've talked about this. Again, I talk to Kelly all the time about the show or about these pieces. So take it for what you will. Victoria Trice, 30, who has a 5 and 10-year-old sons, both enrolled at Sand Lake Elementary School in Orlando, Florida, says that Orange County Public Schools won't let her participate in any activities where she could be in contact with students on school grounds. Now, her attorney says that this was based on her participation in the, quote, adults-only site OnlyFans, as well as the adult access section of Twitter. Now, this mother has been volunteering for the school for 5 years until earlier this month, where she was told not to come back. Trice's attorney says that another parent sent the school board images from her OnlyFans page, which she says can only be viewed by adults and with paid subscription. The mother is still allowed to chaperone field trips with her children, but she's just not allowed to volunteer. So now she's suing the school for $1 million because she feels ostracized, persecuted, and effectively banned. More reported by the New York Post, where you can actually see, I'm not encouraging this, but you can go and see what we're talking about so we can get some perspective. All right. She feels two things at once. All right. As quoted in the article, she says that she feels humiliated that someone felt the need to expose her online presence. At the same time, she says that she's never made efforts to hide her online presence. Well, if you don't care either way, right? Again, you can't make no efforts to hide it, but then feel bad that people find out. That's just she's going to struggle with the double think there. She's thinking two paradoxical things at once. Her lawyer has a rather blunt way of looking at this incident. He stated, quote, "What happened is somebody who took the posture of being a moral guardian wrote a letter to the school, and without notice, she was unceremoniously dumped from being a volunteer. So, because she can't volunteer, which means free time given, she's going to sue them for $1 million. Right? Does this not smell of OnlyFans? You guys understand what I'm trying to get at? This sounds like a money grab. I've volunteered plenty for schools. I have. I did it in high school. I did it in college. I haven't really done it post-college, but again, fatherless guy volunteers for school. Don't want to be that dude either. So again, you have to pass a background check. They do searches on you. I've done this. They do what they can to vet you. Now, while I can't say whether or not she has a husband or not, right? But, and because of that, I can't say that I disagree with how she's choosing to make money, right? She's doing what she thinks she has to. Like, do what you need to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. However, there are consequences. Free speech is a thing, right? But in the United States, there's never been like totally free speech. There's always been some convention. And there should be from a moral standpoint, right? But even so, you can speak out on certain issues, like particularly against the government. The government's not supposed to come back and attack you, but there are consequences when you say things that, or when you do things that people don't want to associate with. That's the heart of cancel culture. Right? Now, again, I don't agree with cancel culture because I don't agree with why we're canceling people. Not that we are. McCarthyism, again, was not a bad thing. We were hunting active enemies of the state, who were giving real information from the government to our Cold War enemies, the Russians, when that whole thing started. Right? So when people were like, oh my God, this is McCarthyism, some people might think that's all right. And in some cases, it is. All right? But that's my opinion. What I can say is, actions have consequences. The belittling statement from the lawyer is kind of sets the tone, right? Some parent is taking the posture of being a moral guardian. Awesome. Someone should. Anybody. Think about this. We're giving our children to these places, schools, for 8 hours a day. All right? That's a lot of time. You're just seeping in other people's juices, right? The mind meld, right? And I'm not even going to go onto the indoctrination, like conspiracies or whatever else you want to call them. I'm not going to go into that, okay? Parents are the people who should be trusted the most with the welfare of their children, right? You cannot care more for my children than I do. That's a fact of life. I would die for my kids. I would live for my kids. There's nothing that you can say, do, or even imply that would be accurate enough to say that you somehow care about my kids more than I do. All right? You'd be a fool to even try. Now, that's not a challenge, but I'm saying who should be trusted with my kids' welfare or for policing that? Me. My wife, like we're tied. She probably cares more. We care about different things, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is the school administration, as much as of an individual as they want to perceive my child as, like they can't care more about that kid than I do at all. And that means that we, the parents, should have a say in the morality of the people who are entrusted. It's not just what they're learning. It's, again, I have total say in who they're around, be it public schools or in a private setting. Now, what I really think happened, now this is just speculation, okay? I think there was a wife that caught her husband looking at this woman's stuff, all right? Which has its own problems, all right? But this is purely speculation. If she had been doing this for years without incident, like this was bound to happen eventually, but let's just be lucky that the kids are younger. If this were high school, for sure, the school would need to squash this, okay? Now, kids, as we know, are being exposed to porn very early. Like, raise your hand if you started looking at porn a little early. I'd be, again, hands up. Like, I got exposed pretty early, right? Is access to it even easier than it was back in my day? Yeah, it is. Does that make it somehow okay? Of course not. So having this woman around children, building relationships with them, is not going to end well. This woman is objectively attractive. Blonde, well-built, she's got tattoos, she's wearing skimpy clothing. Who's not going to look at that? Especially once it's out there. The answer is someone who's actively trying not to. All right? Now, you think of for 2 seconds that when this woman's older sons find what or more importantly, their friends, so their older her 10-year-old's friends find out that they're hot friend's their friend's hot mom has got pornographic material out there, that they're not going to find that? You can fake OnlyFans accounts are easy to set up. Like, everybody's got PayPal these days, and her less revealing stuff is out there on both TikTok and Instagram for free. So in high school, we're exposing our kids to someone that they're going to grow close to. That person has public material, so we'll just like public material out there that will change fundamentally the relationship that she has with these kids, if that's ever out there. That relationship will change forever. And we know that schools are absolutely failing to protect our kids from sexual predators. The number of teacher-student violations vastly overshadows the raw number of incidents found within the Catholic Church. All right? That's a fact. Now, I'm not justifying the things that went down in the Catholic Church, but I want to point out that the Catholic Church suffered greatly for this, and rightly so. And I'm saying this as a Catholic. All right? Yet somehow, the public education system is still getting a pass for this. Again, we're prosecuting the cases that come out, as we should. Right? But that doesn't negate the fact that we're not taking more steps. Again, they don't have the best track record. All right? At least this Florida school system is deciding to eliminate the potential of any compromising incident. And what happens when they take a proactive step in the better interest of our kids? They get sued for $1 million. You know what? I'm with the school. You know, at least with strippers, okay? Like, my wife brought this up. You know, well, what if a stripper has a kid? And yeah, good. I want, again, I'm all for moms being involved, right? But you don't get to take pictures of strippers, right? And if I happen to go into a school or into a strip joint and saw my kid's teacher, that relationship has, and better yet, if I saw my kid's teacher at a strip club on stage and stayed, yeah, for sure, that relationship is fundamentally changed forever. All right? Wife's not going to be happy about that if she ever found out. Right? But if I started getting lap dances or anything else, for sure, lines have been crossed, right? Because what you've done, you've taken away the veil of familiarity. You don't know strippers' real names. You're not allowed to ask where they I was talking to a stripper once, and she said that she was going to school. I asked where. She said, not supposed to tell you. And I wasn't trying to be creepy. I was trying to be polite, right? There was a lull period where I was actually talking to her. But what I'm saying is, you've broken down that veil, right? We've talked about this on the last episode where we talked about OnlyFans, right? This gets hairy very quickly, especially in an environment like a school. All right? There's no way to contain this. You can't erase what's on the internet. Nothing's ever really gone. Right? Outside of complete excision is what the school did. There's no way to contain this. My wife came at this from a mother's perspective. The mother doesn't get to spend time with her kids. Well, we're talking about volunteering. This isn't story time. All right? No, we're talking about volunteering, going to the school periodically, often, not to see your kid, but to volunteer for the school. All right? She's still allowed to chaperone, so she's allowed to participate. But let's not forget the staff. Imagine the male teachers, and they absolutely have access. The male, principal, the male whoever, right, is going to have access to this. What sort of sexual harassment issue are we just asking for? Oh, Mr. Vanderby makes an awkward move on the single mom whose naked photos he pleasures himself to. How does that conversation end? Here's a hint. Not well. Okay? I applaud this school for doing the prudent thing and saying that they'll allow her to chaperone, but not allow this woman with regular contact with students. If she really wants to volunteer that badly, take down the content and the websites and assimilate back into decent society. And again, I just pray for this woman's children, that they don't have to deal with their mother's chosen profession from their peers. Hey, dude, I jerk off to your mom. That's going to be said if this doesn't break down. I hope that mom knows that. Okay, this gets out, yeah, for sure. I mean, her name's in headlines. Okay, some kid that doesn't like her son is going to take full advantage of this. It's not going to end well. Okay, and then we're going to be asking, well, what do we do to protect the kid from this bullying or any of this crap? All right, we should not be celebrating this woman's story. It's tragic that it came to this. Whoever sits on that school board, my hat's off to you because you made the moral choice. Thank you for taking the moral stand and protecting our children from the potential of an inappropriate relationship or knowledge of this material from a mother that they would likely be interacting with regularly. All right? Hats off to the school. They made the right call. I am glad that someone did. Lastly, a story again all over the internet. All right? A woman was raped on the SEPTA train earlier this month. Okay, now SEPTA, just so you guys know, is like the MARTA in Atlanta. It's the Philadelphia train system that ferries people all over the city, but also out to the suburbs for their commute. All right? I've been on this train system. All right? It's actually, like the one I was on was actually pretty nice. The unidentified woman, quote from the article, the unidentified woman was riding the Market Frankfurt line and was sitting alone when Ngoy, the rapist, sat next to her and they began interacting, police said. Around 9:20 p.m., minutes after the woman enters the train car, Ngoy began to touch her, prompting her to continuously push him away, the complaint said, citing video surveillance of the train. The article continues. Just after 9:50 p.m., Ngoy allegedly removes the woman's pants and lowers his pants. He then is seen thrusting his groin or her groin area for 6 minutes, police said. Just before 10 p.m., a SEPTA police officer enters the train and pulls Ngoy off the woman while, quote, while Ngoy was actively raping the victim, the complaint said. The officer responded to the call on a train approaching the 69th Street terminal when he saw Ngoy with his pants undone on top of a woman with her pants off. This sickens me. All right, not just because of the horrific interaction, because that rape is awful, but because they were in a packed car full of people. Quote from the article, there was a lot of people, in my opinion, that should have intervened. Somebody should have done something. Upper Darby Police Superintendent Timothy Bernhardt said. People took video of this. Are you kidding me? And it was seen all over the security tapes. Like that one person got up and did something. Please, my listeners, don't be this person. It is not for you to be the videographer in this situation. Do not be that person with your cell phone who's filming outrage. The damage to you, the camera person, will be immense. Sacrificing your masculinity, sacrificing your moral worth in this situation is not worth it. What was this guy going to do? Fight you back? Yeah? Awesome. I shared this story with my wife and my employees. I work with men, real men. Nothing would have stopped me, and people know that. Consequences be you know how broken I would have been had I watched that happen and gone home that day with the weight of watching someone get actively raped for 10 minutes on my conscience. That would have crushed me. Right? There's no amount of confession I can go to make, I don't think that it can make me feel clean of that. The utter failure, the whole middle of your spirit, that's going to be an extremely hard gap to fill. And if that's damage done. You know what would not have been hard to make up for? Using the firm kick, you know that kick that's usually reserved for kicking it at a locked door? Using that on this guy's like lat hip area as you walk up and just crush this person. If you can imagine my size 11 work boot crunching into this guy's center of gravity with the rage that I feel right now towards him and the people who watch. Whew. And again, my employees and my wife shuddered too when I told them like just exactly how I would have reacted. Now, I don't give a about consequences of that. In fact, if you had a firearm, you'd be legally fine killing this man. You would. It's true. Rape legally is considered a life-threatening is considered life-threatening pursuant to the law. You're not allowed to shoot someone dead unless you've retreated as much as you can from the situation and you feel that your life is actively still in danger. All right? Rape counts in the second piece, so your life is actively being threatened, and if the activity is actively happening right then, there's no more retreating. And because of the law, if you, someone who has a weapon or is a weapon, see someone who's in that situation where they could use deadly force, you are allowed to use deadly force too, on their behalf. On behalf of this woman who's being actively raped while people sat there and watched. It's disgusting. Now, I don't know if beating a visa jumper with a criminal record to death would be permissible. Truly, because they would try to make it a case that at some point during the situation, you would have to decide to continue beating this man to death. Right? That decision point is what they're going to hang it on. Right? Did you ever, in that moment, did you run into a point where you decided to continue escalating? Right? That decision point makes it murder. Right? Because things are potentially considered de-escalated when he's limp on the floor, dead or alive. Again, I don't know. A few years ago, and this is again why I don't exactly know. A few years ago, a father wasn't charged at all with the savage beating to death of a man who was attempting to rape his little girl at his house. But again, that happened in Texas, not Philadelphia, which is considerably more liberal and thusly more likely to prosecute in this case. The Delaware County DA, Jack Stolzheimer, said that Pennsylvania law doesn't allow for the prosecution of the passengers. Quote from the article, accordingly, any passengers who believe he or she may have observed the October 13th event on the SEPTA train should not fear persecution, he said, encouraging witnesses to share information with authorities. To be honest with you, I don't know how I feel about this last detail. If it's truly in the law that they cannot prosecute, then, again, I'm trying to be a proponent of the law. I get it. But, again, it's a tough break. But if they're deciding not to prosecute, that. They have all of the evidence that they need. Right? They have cell phone video already. They have clear security footage. And the cop who rescued this woman pulled him out of her. What more evidence do you need? Encourage witnesses to share information. We need to course correct on this one. All right? I'm for using the full weight of the law on this. You see a person getting raped and you act like no ambiguity. You didn't just hear it around a corner or whatever. You actively watched it happen. Nah. No. Get up, be a man. You can't tell me that car was full of women who were scared of this dude physically. I know Philly doesn't like guns, but dang. That car was full of cowards, moral cowards. And I bring up these stories because we are making strides in the right direction. All right? We've got men dropping into foreign countries to save their family. We've got fathers who are actively stepping in when schools are failing. We've got school boards in some instances making the moral decisions to protect our children from and maybe even themselves from potential legal issues and moral harm to kids. All right, we're making strides in the right direction. People, masculinity is starting to stir. Maybe it's for strength's sake, for strength's sake, that men and masculinity itself just keeps getting pummeled by these feminists, by whoever that are saying men aren't necessary, that masculinity is a lie. What if they are? Like, it could be that masculinity was asleep, or it was so insignificant that we stopped paying attention. Unfortunately, people's minds are starting to change. But because of that, masculinity is waking up. It is a necessary ingredient to the natural order, and it's starting to exercise its weight where it needs to be. All right? This thing needs to be put back into balance, or we will suffer for our failures. It is up to us to replace masculinity and put it back in the place it needs to be. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you liked this episode, please go to our pages and follow and subscribe for free. Also, please leave us a 5-star review. That really helps us get recommended and helps us spread the word. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and wherever else you get your content. Good luck out there.